Lady Cecilia Ashford, Duchess of Blackmore, sat across from her husband at the breakfast table on a spring morning that smelled of rain and marmalade, and said 5 words that shattered 4 years of silence. The porcelain cup slipped from Marcus's hand, tea spreading across the white linen like a map of something ruined. But Cecilia did not flinch. She continued spreading marmalade on her toast with the steady precision of a woman reviewing accounts, then listed 4 estate operations her husband had never heard of. Each one proof that the woman he had married and forgotten was the architect of everything he believed he owned. When he asked what drainage assessment she meant, she put down her knife, rose from the table, and announced that the estate office door would be open. The door had been closed for 4 years, the entire length of their political marriage, because Lady Cecilia Whitfield had been taught that a duchess is a setting, not a stone, and she had run a 4,000-acre estate in complete invisibility, while her husband noticed only the wallpaper. The morning began, as mornings at Blackmore Park always began. Marcus arrived at 8:30, already dressed for London. Cecilia was already seated, the newspaper folded beside her plate. The housekeeper had set out tea, toast, marmalade. Spring light crossed the table in clean lines. Cecilia looked up as Marcus sat. She did not smile. She had not smiled at breakfast in 14 months, not since the morning she saw him return from the village with hay on his coat sleeve and realized the affair had begun. She set down her teacup. The porcelain made no sound against the saucer. "I saw you with her." Marcus went still. The cup he had been lifting stopped halfway to his mouth. "Cecilia, at the village assembly last Thursday, you were standing by the terrace doors. Lady Arabella Sinclair was laughing. You touched her wrist." The cup dropped. Not thrown, not set down. It simply slipped from his hand and struck the table edge, shattering. Tea spread across the white linen in a dark stain that reached the edge of her plate. Cecilia did not move. She lifted the marmalade, spread it across her toast with the same steady motion she had used a moment before, and took a bite. Marcus stared at the broken porcelain. "I did not intend." "The Northfield drainage assessment is due Friday," Cecilia said. Her voice was calm, the tone she used when reviewing household accounts with the housekeeper. "The Howell lease renewal requires your signature by month's end. The South Cottage fuel allocation has been overspent by £12 because your sister Caroline authorized a delivery I did not approve." Marcus blinked. "What drainage assessment?" Cecilia set down her toast. She looked at him across the table, across 4 years of a marriage that had been a transaction between her father's voting bloc and his family's debts. "Precisely," she said. She rose. The chair made no sound on the carpet. She folded her napkin, placed it beside her plate, and turned toward the door. "I will be in the estate office," she said. "The door will be open." She walked out. Her footsteps faded down the corridor. Marcus sat alone at the table, tea soaking into the linen, porcelain scattered across his plate, and stared at the space where his wife had been. Mrs. Fellows, the housekeeper, stood in the doorway. She had been at Blackmore for 30 years. She had seen duchesses come and go, seen marriages that were political arrangements and marriages that were love matches. She had seen Lady Cecilia arrive 4 years ago, a bride of 25 with intelligent eyes and a dowry large enough to clear the debts the late Duke had left behind. She had watched Cecilia disappear into the estate office every morning at 7 and emerge at 6 in the evening. She had watched the Duchess rebuild Blackmore in silence, while the Duke signed reports he never read. Mrs. Fellows had seen Cecilia leave 1,000 rooms. This was the first time the room had changed behind her. Marcus looked up. "The estate office door has never been open." "No, Your Grace," Mrs. Fellows said. "It has not." Lady Cecilia Whitfield had arrived at Blackmore Park 4 years earlier on an October afternoon. A bride in a marriage arranged between her father, the Earl of Whitfield, and the late Duke of Blackmore's solicitors. Her father needed the Ashford voting block. Marcus needed her dowry to cover debts his father had accumulated over 2 decades of poor investments and poorer judgment. She had expected to hostess, to manage the household staff, plan dinners, oversee the nursery when children arrived. She had been trained for that role by her governess, Miss Phelps, a Cambridge mathematician's daughter who had taught her arithmetic, geometry, and the principle that a woman's intelligence was a loaded weapon, pointed at the problem, never at the room, Miss Phelps had said. Cecilia's mother had taught her the rest. A duchess is a setting, not a stone. You are the frame that holds the picture. You are not the picture itself. Cecilia had absorbed both lessons. She arrived at Blackmore prepared to be invisible. What she found was an estate in disorder. The steward, Mr. Harrow, had been skimming 11% off the tenant rents for 6 years. The drainage system dated from the previous century and no longer functioned. 3 tenant cottages in the South Field had collapsed roofs. The estate accounts operated at a loss of £400 annually. Marcus signed the quarterly reports without reading them. His sister Caroline managed the household social calendar and believed the estate ran itself. Cecilia spent the first week walking the fields alone. She carried a notebook Miss Phelps had given her and recorded everything she saw. Collapsed fences, flooded drainage channels, tenants living in cottages with holes in the roofs large enough to let rain pool on the floors. She returned to the house, went to the estate office, and opened the account ledgers. It took her 3 days to confirm that Harrow was stealing. It took her 2 weeks to calculate how much. It took her 1 month to present the evidence to Marcus in a format he could not ignore. Marcus dismissed Harrow. He asked Cecilia to recommend a replacement. She recommended Mr. Coates, a tenant's son who had studied accounting in London and returned to Blackmore when his father fell ill. Coates was competent, methodical, and honest. Marcus hired him. Cecilia gave Coates his first instruction in private. Every report you prepare will be written in your hand. Every decision I make will be presented as your recommendation. His Grace will sign what you present. He will not question a man's work. Coates had hesitated. Your Grace, this is your work. It is the estate's work, Cecilia said. That is all that matters. For 4 years, she rebuilt Blackmore in silence. She renegotiated 63 tenant leases, reducing rents where necessary and extending terms to families who had farmed Blackmore land for generations. She redesigned the Northfield drainage, hiring a surveyor from London and spending 3 months walking the gradient lines herself with a brass measuring instrument she ordered from a scientific supplier in Cambridge. She repaired the south cottages, allocated funds for roof repairs, and ensured every tenant household had sufficient fuel for winter. She increased estate revenue by 31%. Every quarterly report Marcus signed was her work, rewritten in Coates's hand on her instruction. Every lease negotiation he approved was her calculation. Every field improvement he funded was her design. Marcus never asked where the reports came from. He signed them, complimented Coates on his competence, and returned to London for parliamentary sessions. Meanwhile, 14 months ago, Marcus had begun an affair with Lady Arabella Sinclair. Arabella was witty, politically connected, and occupied a space Cecilia did not contest. Cecilia had learned early that a political marriage did not include fidelity. It included duty, children when they arrived, and the appearance of contentment. She had performed all 3. She had hosted dinners, managed the household, and borne a daughter, Charlotte, 3 years ago. She had not expected love. She had not asked for it. She had asked for nothing until the breakfast. 3 days after the confrontation, Cecilia made an irreversible choice. She went to her writing desk in the morning room, opened the drawer where she kept the estate office key, and held it in her palm. The key was small, iron, cold. She had locked the office door every evening for 4 years, ensuring no one saw her work. She walked to the office. The corridor was empty. The house was quiet. She unlocked the door, turned the handle, and pushed it open. Then she removed the key from the lock, placed it in her pocket, and walked away. The door stayed open. At 8 o'clock, Mr. Coates arrived for their daily review of estate business. He stopped in the corridor, staring at the open door. Cecilia was already at the desk. The quarterly report lay unsigned in front of her. "Your Grace," Coates said carefully. "The door will remain open," Cecilia said. Coates entered slowly. He set his ledger on the desk. "The quarterly report is prepared for His Grace's signature." Cecilia picked up the quill, dipped it in ink, and signed her own name at the bottom of the first page. "Cecilia Whitfield Ashford, Duchess of Blackmore." She set down the quill. "For 4 years, I instructed you to present my work in a hand my husband would not question. A man's hand. That instruction is rescinded." Coates stared at the signature. "Your Grace, if the tenants will know that the leases they have signed, the repairs they have received, and the rents they have paid were negotiated by the Duchess of Blackmore. They will know because this report, with my signature, will be copied and distributed to every tenant household on this estate. Your Grace, you have been complicit in my invisibility for 4 years, Mr. Coates. I do not fault you for it. I ordered it, but the order is revoked. From this day, every report, every lease, every account will bear my name. If His Grace objects, he may address his objections to me directly, in this office, through this open door." Coates looked at her for a long moment. Then he nodded. "Yes, Your Grace." The reports went out that afternoon. By week's end, every tenant at Blackmore knew the name behind 4 years of fair leases, repaired cottages, and functional drainage. Marcus walked past the open office door at 10:30 on the 4th day. He stopped. Cecilia was at the desk, maps spread across the surface. Coates stood beside her, pointing to a boundary line on the northern property edge. Cecilia was speaking, her voice calm and precise. "The eastern gradient is too steep for the current outlet. We will need to extend the channel another 40 yards and install a secondary drainage point here." She marked the map with a pencil. Coates nodded. "I will contact the surveyor. Do so today. The rain last week flooded the lower field. If we do not address the gradient before autumn, we will lose the entire harvest." Marcus stood in the corridor, watching. He had passed this door every day for 4 years. It had always been closed. He had never wondered what was behind it. Now he knew. His wife, at a desk, with maps on the wall, ledgers stacked on the shelves, and a man deferring to her on a question Marcus did not understand. He walked on, but the image stayed with him. That evening, he returned. The door was still open. Cecilia was alone, writing in a ledger by candlelight. He stopped in the doorway. "You have been doing this for 4 years." She did not look up. "Yes." "Why did I not know?" "Because you did not ask." She set down her quill, closed the ledger, and looked at him. "You signed reports you never read. You approved expenditures you never questioned. You inherited an estate your father left in disorder, and you believed it repaired itself." "I believed Coates. Coates is competent, but he is not the architect. I am. Marcus stepped into the room. The maps on the wall showed field boundaries, drainage channels, tenant holdings. Every line was labeled in a hand he did not recognize. "Is this your handwriting?" "Yes." He moved closer, reading the annotations. Northfield Drainage Assessment, October 1821. South Cottage Roof Repair, January 1822. Howell Lease Renewal, March 1823. 4 years of work, 4 years of decisions, 4 years of an estate he had believed was his, managed by a woman he had never seen. "Why?" he asked. Cecilia rose. She faced him across the desk. "Because someone had to. Because the tenants deserved roofs that did not leak and rents they could pay. Because your father left you debts and disorder, and you were too occupied with Parliament to notice. You could have told me. I was taught that a duchess does not sit at a desk with ink on her hands. I was taught that competence is unseemly. I was taught that a woman's intelligence is a weapon she must never point at the room." She paused. "So I pointed it at the problem. I rebuilt your estate in silence. And you never noticed because I ensured you would not." Marcus looked at the maps, the ledgers, the careful annotations in her hand. "I should have noticed." "Yes," Cecilia said. "You should have." She walked past him, out of the office, and down the corridor. Marcus stayed in the room, surrounded by 4 years of work he had never seen, and felt the ground shift beneath him. Over the next 2 weeks, Blackmore reorganized itself around Cecilia's visible authority. Tenants who had always addressed Mr. Coates now came to the Duchess directly. They arrived at the kitchen door in the south field, across the estate office desk. They brought questions about leases, repairs, boundary disputes. Cecilia answered them. She knew every tenant by name, every field by gradient, every cottage by the year its roof had been repaired, and which budget line had paid for it. The housekeeper adjusted her reporting line without being asked. She began confirming weekly budgets with Cecilia, not with Caroline. The cook did the same. Caroline noticed. She found Cecilia in the morning room 1 week after the breakfast, drinking tea and reviewing a tenant lease. "What you are doing is unseemly," Caroline said. Cecilia set down the lease. "What am I doing?" "Sitting at a desk with ink on your hands, receiving tenants at the kitchen door, signing reports that should bear my brother's name." "The reports bear the name of the person who wrote them," Cecilia said. "That person is me." A duchess does not. A duchess does not sit at a desk. A duchess stands in a ballroom. I know. I was told. Cecilia rose. "And while I stood in your ballroom, your brother's estate was losing £400 a year. It is not losing it now. That is my ink." Caroline's face flushed. "You overstep. I step where I have always stood. You simply did not see me." Cecilia walked past her, out of the morning room, and returned to the office. Caroline stood alone, her authority crumbling in a house that had always deferred to her, and realized the structure she had controlled was scaffolding on a building someone else had designed. 1 week later, Marcus attended a dinner at the neighboring estate of Lord and Lady Pemberton. Cecilia sat opposite him at the long table, eating steadily and saying little. Lord Pemberton, a jovial man in his 60s, leaned toward Marcus. "I hear Blackmore's revenue has improved considerably in recent years. You must be pleased." Marcus smiled. "The estate has been well managed. Your Northfield, in particular. The drainage improvements are remarkable. I attempted something similar on my eastern property, but the gradient proved too difficult." "How did you manage it?" Marcus set down his wine glass. He had walked past the open office door enough times to absorb fragments of Cecilia's work. He had heard her speak to Coates about gradients, outlets, drainage channels. The key is the eastern gradient, Marcus said. The natural slope is too steep for a single outlet. So we extended the channel 40 yards and installed a secondary drainage point. The water now flows in two directions, reducing the pressure on the lower field. Pemberton nodded, impressed. Brilliant. And the cost? Manageable. The surveyor's fee was the largest expense, but the long-term savings in crop yield more than justify it. Across the table, Cecilia set down her fork. She heard her own words in her husband's mouth, her Northfield projection. The calculation she had made at 2 in the morning last November, sitting alone in the office with a candle burning low and a brass measuring instrument cold in her hands. Her phrasing, her emphasis on the eastern gradient, her decision to extend the channel. Marcus delivered it as though the knowledge lived in him naturally, as though estates simply produced information and dukes simply knew it. He did not know it was hers. He did not know it was anyone's. He had absorbed it the way weather absorbs through walls, present, unattributed, belonging to no one. Cecilia picked up her wine glass, drank slowly, and set it down with the same steady precision she had used to spread marmalade on the morning the cup shattered. After dinner, she excused herself early. She walked to the estate office, locked the door behind her, and sat in the dark for an hour. The humiliation was not that he had stolen her work. It was that her work had been so perfectly invisible that it could be stolen without theft, because no one knew it had an owner. The next morning, Mr. Coates arrived at the estate office with a letter. "Your Grace," he said carefully. "This arrived from a London surveyor. He is requesting boundary coordinates for the Northfield corridor." Cecilia took the letter, read it, and set it down. "We haven't requested a survey." "No, Your Grace." "Who authorized this inquiry?" "The letter does not say." Cecilia looked at the signature. The surveyor's name was unfamiliar, but the request was specific. Too specific. The Northfield corridor was the most valuable section of the estate. It bordered the main road to London and had been the subject of inquiries from Lord Percival Drake, a canal investor, for 2 years. Cecilia had refused every inquiry. The corridor was not for sale. But Drake had not stopped asking. "Send a reply," Cecilia said. "Inform the surveyor that Blackmore's Northfield corridor is not available for survey or acquisition. All future inquiries should be directed to the Duchess of Blackmore." Coates hesitated. "Your Grace, if Lord Drake is involved, then Lord Drake will learn that the person who designed the Northfield leases, calculated the boundary coordinates, and negotiated the tenant agreements is not a man he can bully or bribe. He will learn it directly." Coates nodded and left. Cecilia sat alone in the office, the surveyor's letter in her hand, and felt the architecture of the threat assemble itself. Drake had been attempting to acquire the corridor for 2 years. He had failed because Cecilia had ensured every lease, every boundary, every legal document was airtight. But if Drake had obtained specific details about the corridor's value, the lease terms, the revenue projections. Cecilia's stomach turned. She stood, walked to the corridor, and found Marcus in the library. "I need to speak with you," she said. Marcus looked up from his newspaper. "Of course." "In the estate office." He followed her down the corridor. The door was open. Cecilia gestured for him to sit. She placed the surveyor's letter on the desk. "This arrived this morning. A London surveyor is requesting boundary coordinates for the Northfield corridor. We did not authorize this inquiry." Marcus read the letter. "Perhaps it is a mistake." "It is not a mistake. It is Lord Percival Drake." "The canal investor?" "Yes. He has been attempting to acquire the corridor for 2 years. I have refused every inquiry. But this letter suggests he has obtained specific information about the corridor's value. Marcus frowned. How would he obtain that information? Cecilia looked at him. You tell me. Marcus went still. At the Pemberton dinner last week, Cecilia said, you repeated my Northfield revenue projections, my exact figures, my phrasing. You delivered my work as though it belonged to no one. I did not realize. You did not realize because you never asked where the information came from. You absorbed it, and you repeated it. To guests, to colleagues, to anyone who asked. Marcus set down the letter. You think I gave Drake the information? I think you gave it to someone who gave it to Drake. The silence stretched. Then Marcus said very quietly, Arabella. Cecilia did not answer. Marcus stood. He walked to the window, his back to her. She asked me about the estate once. At a dinner in London, I thought she was being polite. What did you tell her? Revenue figures, lease terms, the Northfield corridor. He turned. I did not think. You did not think because you did not know the information had value. You did not know it had an owner. Cecilia's voice was calm, steady. Every figure you repeated was mine, every calculation, every projection. I negotiated those leases. I designed that corridor. And you handed my work to a woman who sold it to a man attempting to destroy the estate I built. Marcus stared at her. I did not know. No, Cecilia said. You did not. She rose. Drake will come. He will bring a solicitor and a petition. He will claim the corridor falls within a contested boundary or an old easement. He will use my own figures to build his case. What do we do? Cecilia looked at him. We. Yes. There is no we. Marcus, there is me, the person who knows this estate. And there is you, the person who signed reports he never read and repeated intelligence he did not understand. She walked to the door. I will handle Drake, she said. You may watch. That evening, Marcus could not sleep. He went to the library, intending to read. But his mind would not settle. At midnight, he found himself in the corridor outside the estate office. The door was open. Candlelight flickered inside. Cecilia was at the desk, reviewing boundary surveys. Marcus stepped into the doorway. You are awake? Yes. So am I. She did not look up. Go to bed, Marcus. Teach me, he said. She stopped writing. She set down her quill and looked at him. Teach me what I should have learned 4 years ago, Marcus said. Teach me the estate, the fields, the leases, the drainage. Teach me so that I understand what you built and why it matters. Cecilia studied him for a long moment. Then she gestured to the chair beside her. Sit. He sat. She opened the first ledger. Her handwriting filled the pages. October 1821. Arrived Blackmore. Estate accounts in disorder. Steward overcharging by approximately 11%. Drainage non-functional. South cottages require re-roofing before winter. No one has asked me to address any of this. I will begin tomorrow. Marcus read. She did not explain. She let the pages speak. He read the entry for November. The dismissal of Harrow. The hiring of Coates. The first lease renegotiation. He read December. The South Cottage roof repairs. The allocation of winter fuel. He read January. The Northfield drainage assessment. At some point, Cecilia's chair had shifted beside his. Their shoulders pressed together in the half-dark. The candle burned low. Marcus turned a page. You did all of this alone. Yes. Why did you not ask for help? Because I was taught that asking is weakness. That competence must be private, that a woman who works visibly is a woman who threatens the structure she supports. Marcus looked at her. I married an extraordinary woman and spent 4 years noticing the wallpaper. Cecilia's mouth curved just slightly. The wallpaper is also mine. I selected it in the 2nd year. He laughed. The sound was rough, genuine. The first real sound she had heard him make in 4 years. She leaned into his shoulder. Not far, just enough to feel his warmth. I am 4 years behind, Marcus said. Yes. Then I will read faster. You will read with me. I do not trust you alone with the figures. You have a parliamentary habit of skimming. He smiled. She stayed against his shoulder, did not pull back. They sat together in the candlelight. The ledger opened between them and read until dawn. 3 days later, Marcus visited the nursery. Charlotte was drawing at her small table, her tongue between her teeth in concentration. The nursemaid, Mrs. Gill, was folding linens in the corner. Marcus knelt beside his daughter. What are you drawing? Charlotte held up the paper. Mama. The drawing showed a woman at a desk, holding a quill. Behind her, maps covered the wall. Marcus looked at the other drawings pinned to the nursery wall. He had visited this room on schedule for 3 years. He had never looked at the wall. Mama in the office. Mama and the counting man. Mama in the field, and one of him. Papa at breakfast. A man, a table, a cup. Nothing else. Charlotte picked up another drawing. This is Mama fixing the roof. Which roof? Marcus asked. The people's roof. The one that had a hole. Marcus stared at the crayon rendering of his wife standing beside a cottage, pointing at a roof. His 3-year-old daughter knew more about her mother's life than he did. He had been told the scope by Coates. He had seen the evidence in the ledgers. But Charlotte's drawings delivered the emotional blow. His blindness extended to every relationship in the household. Thank you for showing me, Marcus said quietly. Charlotte nodded and returned to her drawing. Marcus left the nursery, walked to the estate office, and found Cecilia at the desk. I saw Charlotte's drawings, he said. Cecilia looked up. Did you? She has been documenting your work for 3 years. Children see what adults ignore. Marcus stepped into the room. I ignored you. Yes. I will not ignore you again. Cecilia set down her quill. Words are easy, Marcus. Show me. How? Walk the north field with me tomorrow. Learn the drainage. Learn the gradient. Learn why the corridor Drake wants is worth fighting for. Marcus nodded. I will. The next morning, Cecilia and Marcus walked the north field together. The ground was soft from recent rain. Cecilia wore practical boots and carried the brass measuring instrument she had used to calculate the drainage gradient 3 years earlier. Marcus wore boots meant for riding, not fieldwork. They were already muddy. Cecilia stopped at the eastern edge of the field. This is where the gradient begins. The natural slope is too steep for a single outlet. Do you see the channel? Marcus looked. He saw a shallow ditch running along the field's edge. Yes. That channel carries water from the upper field to the outlet here. She pointed to a stone culvert at the base of the slope. But the volume is too great for one outlet, so we extended the channel 40 yards and installed a secondary drainage point. She handed him the measuring instrument. Hold this level. Measure the gradient from this point to the secondary outlet. Marcus took the instrument. It was heavier than it looked. He held it at eye level, trying to keep it steady. You are holding it like a wine glass, Cecilia said. Level your wrist. She stepped behind him, placed her hands over his, and adjusted his grip. Her fingers were firm, precise. She corrected the angle of his wrist, holding the position 2 seconds longer than necessary. Now read the gradient, she said. Marcus squinted at the brass markings. 3.2. 3.4. You are reading the wrong line. She leaned closer, her shoulder against his back, and pointed to the correct marking. There. 3.4, Marcus said. Better. She stepped back, but the warmth of her hands on his remained. They walked the length of the channel together. Cecilia explained the calculations, the surveyor's recommendations, the cost of installation. Marcus listened, asked questions, and began to understand the work that had gone into the field he had walked past 100 times without seeing. At the secondary outlet, Cecilia stopped. This is what Drake wants. The corridor between this field and the main road. If he acquires it, he controls access to the canal route. He controls the revenue. He controls Blackmore's northern boundary. And you designed the leases to prevent that. Yes, every tenant agreement includes a clause prohibiting sublease or transfer without the estate's written consent. Every boundary coordinate is documented in the county records. Drake cannot acquire this corridor legally. Then how will he try? By claiming the boundaries are incorrect, by citing old surveys that have been superseded, by using the intelligence you gave Arabella to build a case that the corridor falls outside Blackmore's legal title. Marcus looked at the field, the channel, the careful work that had saved the harvest and protected the estate. I gave him the weapon to destroy what you built, he said quietly. You did not know what you were giving away. I should have known. Cecilia looked at him. Yes, you should have. They walked back to the house in silence. But it was not the silence of distance. It was the silence of two people who had finally begun to see each other. 2 days later, Lady Arabella Sinclair sent a note to Blackmore. Marcus read it in the library. Cecilia was in the estate office. The note was brief. Arabella had heard that the quarterly reports now bore the Duchess's name. She wished to congratulate Cecilia on her charming initiative. Marcus set down the note and walked to the estate office. Cecilia was reviewing a lease agreement. She looked up as he entered. Arabella knows, Marcus said. Knows what? That you have claimed authorship of the estate work. She sent a note. Cecilia set down the lease. And she will tell Drake. Good. Marcus blinked. Good. A woman claiming authorship is a woman who can be challenged directly. Drake will accelerate his petition. He will come here expecting to negotiate with you. And he will find me. You want him to come. I want him to walk into this office and see the person whose work he tried to steal. I want him to understand that the intelligence he obtained was not general estate knowledge. It was mine. And I am not a man he can bully or bribe. Marcus looked at her. You are not afraid. I am furious, Cecilia said. There is a difference. Lord Percival Drake arrived at Blackmore Park 1 week later. He brought a solicitor, a surveyor, and a leather case full of documents. Marcus received him in the drawing room. Drake was a tall man in his mid-40s, expensively dressed, with the easy confidence of someone accustomed to getting what he wanted. Your Grace, Drake said, shaking Marcus's hand. Thank you for receiving me. Of course. Drake's solicitor opened the leather case and removed a thick document. We have prepared a petition regarding the Northfield corridor. Our survey indicates that the corridor falls within a contested boundary established by the 1796 enclosure map. We believe the easement rights entitle Lord Drake to negotiate acquisition. Marcus took the document. He understood almost nothing in it. Legal terms, survey coordinates, references to maps he had never seen. He read slowly, stalling. Drake smiled. I understand this is complex. Perhaps we could review the details together. Marcus set down the document. Perhaps we should review these in the estate office. Drake's smile widened. Of course. They walked down the corridor. Marcus opened the estate office door. Cecilia was at the desk. Maps covered the walls. Ledgers lined the shelves. The 4-year record of her work surrounded her. Drake stopped in the doorway. Cecilia rose. She did not smile. Lord Drake, she said, welcome to Blackmore. Drake recovered quickly. Your Grace, I did not realize you would be joining us. This is the estate office, Cecilia said. I work here. Please, sit. Drake sat. His solicitor and surveyor remained standing. Cecilia gestured for Marcus to sit beside her. He did. She took the petition from Marcus's hand and read it standing. Her expression did not change. When she finished, she set the document on the desk. This petition cites the 1796 enclosure map, she said. Yes, the solicitor said. The map establishes? The 1796 map was superseded by the 1803 parish survey, which your solicitor has not included. The solicitor blinked. I was not aware. The 1803 survey moved the easement boundary 400 yards east, outside Blackmore's North Field entirely. I obtained the 1803 survey from the county records office 3 years ago when I renegotiated the North Field leases. She opened a drawer, removed a rolled map, and spread it on the desk. This is the 1803 survey. The boundary line is here. She pointed. 400 yards east of the line cited in your petition. The corridor you are claiming falls entirely within Blackmore's legal title. Drake's solicitor leaned over the map. His face paled. Cecilia continued. The lease terms cited in your petition were my negotiation. The boundary coordinates were my calculation. The revenue projections were obtained by Lady Arabella Sinclair from conversation with my husband, who repeated my work without knowing it was mine. She looked at Drake. You built a legal claim on intelligence stolen from a woman whose name was not on the documents, because she was taught that a duchess is a setting, not a stone. Drake's jaw tightened. Your Grace, I assure you, you obtained confidential estate information through an intermediary and used it to construct a fraudulent petition. The 1803 survey renders your claim invalid. The tenant agreements include clauses prohibiting sublease or transfer without written consent. You have no legal basis for acquisition. She turned to Marcus. These are your estate records. This is your North Field. The petition attacks your title. You may defend it, or I will. The test. For him. Marcus could take the documents. He could thank Cecilia for her assistance and manage Drake between gentlemen. He could preserve the fiction, protect his dignity, and defend the estate under his own authority. An authority that consisted entirely of her work. He looked at Cecilia, at the maps on the wall, at the ledgers that contained 4 years of her handwriting, at the woman who had rebuilt his estate while he noticed the wallpaper. He stood. He did not step behind the desk. He stepped beside it. The person who knows this estate, Marcus said. Every field, every lease, every drainage gradient is my wife. She has managed Blackmore for 4 years. I did not know because I did not look. The petition attacks work she built. She will answer it. Drake stared. Your Grace, this is irregular. What is irregular, Marcus said, is that I signed documents for 4 years without reading them. What is irregular is that my wife rebuilt this estate and I noticed the wallpaper. What is irregular is that you obtained intelligence from a woman in my bed that belonged to the woman at my desk. He looked at Cecilia. Address your petition to the Duchess. She is the authority you are challenging." Drake's solicitor looked at Cecilia. She looked back with the steady patience of a woman who had spent 4 years solving problems no one knew existed. "The 1803 survey, Mr. Drake," she said. "Would you like to examine it, or shall I summarize the 17 ways your petition contradicts it?" Drake gathered his documents. His solicitor closed the leather case. The surveyor said nothing. They left through the door that had been closed for 4 years and was now permanently open. Mr. Coates appeared in the corridor. "For the record," he said, "the quarterly report this quarter was signed by Her Grace the Duchess, as it should have been from the first." That evening, Cecilia sat alone in the estate office. The candle burned low. The maps on the wall cast long shadows. Marcus entered. He did not knock. "You did not need me in that room," he said. Cecilia looked up. "No, I did not." "Then why did you ask me to choose?" "Because a man who steps aside when the woman beside him is more qualified, and does it without performing sacrifice or expecting gratitude, is a man worth teaching drainage to." Marcus smiled. "Is that what I am? A man worth teaching drainage to?" "It is the highest compliment I have available. Drainage is difficult." He sat in the chair beside her. "I should have asked who you were. You should have opened the ledger. I am opening it now. You are 4 years behind. Then I will read faster. You will read with me. I do not trust you alone with the figures. You have a parliamentary habit of skimming." He laughed. She did not pull away when his shoulder pressed against hers. They sat together in the candlelight, the estate office open around them, and read until the candle burned out. 1 year later. Spring morning. Blackmore Park. The same breakfast table. The same light crossing the linen in clean lines. Marcus was already seated. The quarterly report lay open beside his plate. He had read it. He had questions. 3 were intelligent. 1 betrayed that he still did not understand soil composition. Charlotte had drawn a new picture. It was pinned to the breakfast room wall. Mama and Papa in the office. 2 figures at the same desk. For the first time, Charlotte had drawn Papa holding a quill. Cecilia entered. Marcus rose, pulled out her chair, and poured her tea. "The North Field assessment is due Thursday," he said. "I walked it yesterday." He looked at her. She had walked the North Field alone for 4 years. Now she walked it and told him. "How's the drainage?" "Functional, though you may be confusing the outlet with the inlet again." "I am. I will need you to show me this afternoon." "I will." The cup was steady. The linen was clean. The same table where porcelain had shattered a year ago now held 2 people eating breakfast in a room where both of them existed. Summer. The North Field. Dawn. Cecilia walked the drainage line. Marcus carried her notebook. She had given him the task of recording measurements because he had asked and because learning required practice. His boots were muddy. His coat was inappropriate for field work. He had not yet learned to dress for the land he owned. But he was learning. "The gradient reads 3.2 at the east outlet," Marcus said. Cecilia looked at the brass instrument in his hands. 3.4. You are holding it like a wine glass. Level your wrist. He adjusted his grip. 3.4. Better. Charlotte ran from the house, her boots too large, borrowed from the kitchen door. "Mama, Papa's holding it wrong again." "He is learning," Cecilia said. "Is he slow?" "He is thorough. There is a difference." Marcus smiled. Cecilia took the instrument from his hands, adjusted the angle, and handed it back. Their fingers brushed. She did not pull away. The field held them. 4,000 acres built by a woman who had stopped being invisible the day she looked at a duke across a breakfast table and decided the cup was not the only thing that needed breaking. The morning light spread across the land. The drainage functioned. The tenants were housed. The leases were fair. And in the estate office, the door stayed open.